is there a way to make ext file systems use less space for themselves in Linux? I have a bunch of external and internal HDDs that I use on a Linux system. I only have Linux systems, so using a Linux file system would only make sense, right? However, I'm currently using NTFS everywhere, because it gives me the most usable space out of HDDs. I would like to switch to Linux file systems now though, mostly because of permissions and compatibility. For example, I can't get my Lux encrypted NTFS partition to resize under Linux, keeps telling me to chkdsk under Windows. However, when I formatted those HDDs, I tried out a bunch of different file systems, and every Linux file system, even X2, which as far as I know has no journaling, used a lot of space for itself. I don't recall exact values, but it was over 100 GB that NTFS got me more on a 2 TB HDD, which is a lot. So my question is there a way to make ext file systems use less space for themselves? Or is there another file system? I've tried ext2, ext3, ext4, NTFS and FAT, none of them came even close to the usable space NTFS offered me, with perfect Linux support and great usable space. I'd love to hear about how and why file systems, especially X2 which has no journaling, use that much more space than NTFS, and I don't know where else to ask. I'd mostly prefer a way to use ext4 without journaling and anything else that uses up this much space, if that's possible.
By default, X2 and its successors reserve 5% of the file system for use by the root user. This reduces fragmentation, and makes it less likely that the administrator or any root-owned daemons will be left with no space to work in. These reserved blocks prevent programs not running as root from filling your disk. Whether these considerations justify the loss of capacity depends on what the file system is used for. The 5% amount was set in the 1980s when disks were much smaller, but was just left as is. Nowadays 1% is probably enough for system stability. The reservation can be changed using the M option of the tune2fs command. This will set the reserved blocks percentage to 0%, 0 blocks. To get the current value, among others, use the command.
Another point which has not been talked about yet is the number of inodes you reserve on your file system. Per default, MKFS creates a number of inodes which should make it possible to put a whole lot of very small files into your file system. If you know that the files will be very big and you will only put a small number of files on the Fs, you can reduce the number of inodes. Take care. This number, rest, the ratio between space and number of inodes, can only be set at the file system creation time. Even when extending the Fs, the ratio remains the same.
If the data you intend to store on it is compressible, BTRFS mounted with compress equals the STD, or compress force equals the STD, would probably use significantly less disk space than ext. This will make BTRFS transparently compress your data before writing it to disk, and transparently decompress it when reading it back. Also, ext4 pre-allocate all nodes at file system creation. BTRFS creates them as needed. I guess that might save some space too.
If you want to support the channel, please consider subscribing.